In this corner, the national champions in 2016 and 2018. Undefeated, the fourth-ranked team in the nation, the Clemson Tigers. In the other corner, perhaps the greatest tradition in college football, owner of 2 wins over ranked teams, playing at home, the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame.
That's a heavyweight battle. That's what you get when you get a team like Notre Dame and Clemson.
The games have often lived up to the hype. They traded punches in hurricane rains in 2015, but the Tigers stuffed a 2-point conversion attempt to win.
Tonight, hey, it was BYOG, bring your own guts.
Then 2 years ago, in the throes of COVID, the Irish students rocked the house as Notre Dame added to its fabled litany of knocking off top-ranked teams.
Every other team in that situation folds up and goes home. Except this group right here.
Tonight, only one steps between the lines as a legitimate title contender. The other looks to return to glory and show the rocky times of earlier this season are behind them. Let's get ready to rumble. It's Clemson and Notre Dame, and the countdown to kickoff starts now.
Live from Notre Dame Stadium, this is 16 News Now's Countdown to Kickoff.
You are looking live inside a windy Notre Dame Stadium on the first Saturday of November. Tonight, the 5-3 Notre Dame Fighting Irish welcome the undefeated 8-0 Clemson Tigers in a matchup between 2 big college football brands. The last time the Tigers were here, the Irish got the best of them in a double overtime thriller 2 years ago, and they'll look to repeat history under the lights tonight.
Chuck, there's no place like home when home is the house that Rockne built. Thanks for tuning in to Countdown to Kickoff. I'm Drew Sanders, joined by WHME Sports Director Chuck Freeby.
The wind has blown us all the way back to the studio, and what's been the biggest mystery for this year's Notre Dame squad continues to be an enigma. After another impressive road performance last weekend at Syracuse, the action started from the first play of scrimmage. Maybe you were grabbing a beverage out of the fridge or adding some toppings to the chili bowl. If so, you probably missed Brandon Joseph's 29-yard pick six, setting the tone for the Irish right out of the gate. The score, Joseph's first touchdown of his career dating back to his time at Northwestern, and the first defensive score for Al Golden's unit this season. The Irish, never trailing in the game, outscored the Orange 31-7 in the second and fourth quarters, led by a Logan Diggs and 2 Audric Estime rushing touchdowns. That duo, each getting 20 carries. It's the first time that's happened for a pair of Notre Dame running backs in the same game since 2003. Bottom line of this one, Orange crushed. Notre Dame wins in their dome away from home over then 16th ranked Syracuse, 41-24. Here's what the Irish said after the game.
Think about the play for me that kind of changed the game was they start to get a little bit of momentum in that second half. They were down 14 with the ball, and Maris intercepts the ball, and we go down there and we score. And that to me was the moment that I said, okay, we got it.
Was that your game plan to kind of pound the ball and dominate with your offensive line? Was that the plan? It's
been the plan since probably Cal. Let's try to establish the run game. We have to. We got to. That's our identity right now.
Now, another big part of the identity for this year's team is the strength they've shown on special teams. Under a new coordinator, the Irish have been reaching new heights in the often forgotten phase of the game. So let's take a look. Not long after Brian Mason accepted the special teams coordinator position at Notre Dame, he made his intentions clear when it came to blocking kicks and punts.
We certainly want to do a better job of being aggressive in field goal blocking and punt block and see some improvement as to affecting the game, affecting the punter or the kicker as we do some of those different things.
And he wasted no time. Forgive me for calling your attention back to the home opener loss to Marshall, but Mason was already putting his fingerprints on this team way back in week 2.
And Bauer got loose through there.
Then about a month later, when Stanford came to town, the Irish got home again, this time with Prince Colley, but their top performance would come just a week later against UNLV. Isaiah Foskey's known for terrorizing quarterbacks, but he sticks around on fourth down to make life difficult for opposing punters as well, and he did just that against the Rebels, blocking 2 punts in just the first quarter. So what makes Mason's scheme so effective?
Special teams is always something that Notre Dame always hypes on, always works on, and Coach Mace put me in the right position to wrap around a long snapper, just make a play.
You know, Coach Mace has done a great job with all of our phases of special teams. And every week we've been an aggressive punt block unit. Every week we feel like we can take advantage of a punt team, and Coach Mason does a great job of executing the game plan, and those are game changers. Those are momentum shifts, and to be able to capitalize off and get points, it's huge.
So it's been a special year for the Irish on special teams. Through 8 games, Notre Dame has blocked 5 kicks. That's tied with Central Michigan and South Carolina for the most in the nation. And it doesn't stop there. The Irish are tied with the Gamecocks for the most blocked punts in the country with 5. Clemson not far behind with 4 blocked kicks on the year and have 2 blocked punts of their own this season.
And those special teams have been the one consistent factor for Notre Dame. The rest of the team, not so much.
Yeah, so the question is, can Notre Dame build some momentum with the win over Syracuse, bring it into this game with Clemson? Marcus Freeman addressed that earlier this week.
I have a belief in what we're doing. I think what I've learned in these 8 games is that it's never as you plan, right? Is that you have those bumps in the road that you have to kind of figure out and really learn as a leader, okay, this is what you thought you should do. Now, how do you adjust? Would a win versus Clemson help me build confidence in the things we do? Absolutely. You know, that's what victories do.
So if we're talking about confidence here, it makes sense to ask, aside from special teams, what should give Notre Dame confidence going into this game?
Well, this game is taking place under the lights, but I'm looking at the big heavies up front. The identity that Coach Freeman has been hammering home all year is finally showing up on the field. I mean, how many times has he told us this is an O-line and D-line driven program? Team captain Jarrett Patterson has been as advertised. Josh Lugg is up for some hardware this season. And young guys like Blake Fisher and Joe Alt have continued to show their value working in seamlessly. Now, as for the defensive line, well, they've been just as effective and in a similar fashion by getting contributions from just about everyone. Isaiah Foskey's the name everybody knows, but other guys on that line have been making life miserable for opposing offenses.
For me, the confidence comes from the fact that Notre Dame's best players are playing their best ball right now. Obviously, Michael Mayer's been doing that all season long. Isaiah Foskey's another player who has been there, done that in his career. J.D. Bertrand has been steady all season long. He'll need to raise his game tonight, and you can't win this game without a big game from Audric Estime. We've seen what he can do in games against ranked teams, 100 yards rushing efforts against North Carolina and against Syracuse.
Yeah, nothing has come easy for the Irish at home this season, despite having played tougher opponents on the road or at a neutral site. At Notre Dame Stadium, scoring is down, turnovers are up, while rush and pass yard totals are higher away from South Bend than they are here at Notre Dame Stadium. Now, in road environments Clemson has played in this season, 2 games have been decided by 1 score or less. There was a double overtime 51-45 win at Wake Forest on September 24th and a 34-28 win at Florida State on October 15th.
But a big win over Clemson could put this argument that this team plays down at home to bed, at least for now. And that's the topic of today's Lock Monday Auto Group Irish fan poll at WNDU.com. This week we want to know, how much would a win over Clemson change your perception of this season? Your choices? Totally, quite a bit, not much, or it wouldn't. The poll will remain open until 7. Make sure you head to our website to cast your vote. As always, thanks for participating in this week's Lock Monday Auto Group Irish fan poll. Stay tuned for the results later in the show. Much like the Irish offense, we've got a lot of ground to still cover on this edition of the Countdown. The strength of that offense, the really strong guys up front. Matt Locke will introduce us to the player with the smallest name who's making a big contribution to the O-line success. And it's time for our first Crispin Custom Painting Trivia question of the night. Go back 2 years to the 2020 game here against Clemson at the stadium. What Irish player scored the game-winning touchdown in the second overtime? The answer when the countdown returns.
Still got you. You got
Here is your Crispin Custom Painting trivia answer.
That game of November 7th, 2020 is one of the most memorable of the Brian Kelly era. It opened with Kyron Williams racing 65 yards for a touchdown as the Irish would open up a 13-point first-half lead. And Williams would be the man who closed it out for the Irish offense as well. Not only did he score the touchdown in the first overtime, he scored on a 3-yard run in the second OT as well. On the night, Williams had 23 carries for 140 yards and 3 touchdowns as Notre Dame outgunned the Tigers 47-40, winning their only regular season conference title in school history.
Now, one of the top players for the Fighting Irish this season doesn't score touchdowns, but he does help make them happen.
With more about the sophomore sensation up front, let's check in with the third member of the Countdown crew. Live from the stadium, Matt Locke.
How's it going, guys? Joe Alt is a freshman, played in 13 games on the offensive line. He started the last 8, and that includes the Fiesta Bowl. Now he's taking that experience last year into his sophomore season, and he's become a keystone on that offensive line.
For Notre Dame's running back room to be the three-headed monster they can be, the big guys up front need to lead the way. Sophomore Joe Alt has become a key piece on that offensive line over the last few weeks.
Yeah, I think for me it's just been building confidence, snap in and snap out, and really breaking down the film every practice, every game, seeing what I have to work on.
And having played in 13 games as a freshman, he got a sense for how to defend against some of college football's most feared defenders.
I think experience is definitely huge. It's important. But I wouldn't say necessarily easier. I just feel like, there's confidence as the games go on, knowing you've been there and just trusting your ability. The biggest thing for us is just building confidence and being able to run the ball. And, for us, it's when a team can't stop the run, it just, builds so much confidence in the offensive line. You feel so good about that.
Well, this week will be their biggest challenge of the season as Clemson's defensive line, riddled with NFL talent, comes to South Bend.
There's a few schools that have elite defensive lines. This is one of them. It's not just one guy, so it's going to be a big challenge. Our offensive line is playing at a high level and they're getting better, but let's measure ourselves against the best. I know our guys, they're ready. They're excited. Any competitor, I've said this before, wants to measure yourself against the best, and so our guys will be excited for this opportunity.
As a sophomore, Joe Alt is turning heads around the college football world. Pro Football Focus ranks him the top overall tackle out of 618 graded players at his position. PFF also grades him out well as a pass blocker, but as a run blocker, he ranks among the best in the country, playing 76 offensive snaps last week at Syracuse, 52 of which came on running plays. Among notable O-linemen currently playing in the NFL from Notre Dame, Robert Hainsey, Zach Martin, Quentin Nelson, and Ronnie Staley. Could Alt be the next great one? Only time will tell.
Well, if the Irish will have success in the run game, it starts with the boys up front battling Clemson's D-line, and that'll be a matchup to watch. Thank you, Matt. As good as this Notre Dame offensive line is, Marcus Freeman has called the Clemson defensive line elite with NFL talent across the board. So how does that matchup go tonight?
I think this is a demolition derby tonight. Just crashes going on all night long. Freeman isn't exaggerating. Clemson has shut down the run on just about every opponent this season, with the exception of Florida State. But Harry Hiestand had this Irish offensive line playing at a different level in October than they were at in September. Notre Dame has to be able to establish enough run to open up the play action pass for Drew Pyne, because the numbers bear it out. That's when Pyne is most effective. But nobody's going to believe play action on 3rd and 8. They might on 3rd and 3.
Yeah, and despite that formidable Clemson run defense that you mentioned, I don't think this team has much of a choice in what the game plan should be this week. You have to keep pounding the rock and just hope it wears the Tigers down at some point in this one. Drew Pyne only had 19 pass attempts last week. That's the lowest number of passes he's thrown since taking over as a starter. Thing is, I don't feel like they trust him any less than they did just a week prior. I just think they're finally seeing the success in the ground game that they wanted all along. You keep rotating fresh legs through that backfield behind this O-line, which is good and only getting better. Seems like a recipe for success to me.
You don't think they trust him any less? That's nice. We've touched on our thoughts of what's working for this Notre Dame team. Let's get the thoughts of the Irish Illustrated team next. After the break, Tim Priester and Tim O'Malley from Irish Illustrated join the countdown. They'll tell us if takeaways are the biggest takeaway from Notre Dame's win over Syracuse when the countdown returns in 2 minutes. Back live as you look inside Notre Dame Stadium. The Tigers getting ready on the field, about 45 minutes until kickoff on what's been a wet and windy day here in South Bend. This might be one of those nights where Irish fans, if not the Irish themselves, wish they were inside a dome like they were last weekend.
Yeah, Tim Priester and Tim O'Malley discuss what went well at Syracuse in our first Irish Illustrated segment of the evening.
Tim Priester, what's the biggest thing you take away from that Irish win over Syracuse?
Well, probably the most important thing is that they took advantage of an injured Syracuse quarterback and built up a big enough lead so they could withstand the nice job that the backup did in the second half. Now, I mean, that was important. You know, they ran the football against an undersized defensive line, which is exactly what they had to do. They never trailed. Special teams came up big again, and you went on the road in a tough environment and came away with a victory. I didn't think that it was a perfect performance, even though you won by 17 points. But all that really matters is surviving and advancing, and that's what Notre Dame did at Syracuse.
Yeah, I think there's two takeaways. One is kind of the reignition of Audric Estime to have a good game where he now goes into the Clemson game not thinking about fumbling, not having an entire week of practice dedicated to not fumbling. He is coming off a good football game, and of course they're going to continue to work on ball security because they're going to need 20 more carries from Estime in this game. But a real thing might be, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later in the show, is Brandon Joseph's interception touchdown. Maris Leofau gets a tipped interception. Brandon Joseph picks off a pass that is called back because of offsides, but that's still a turnover feeling for Notre Dame. If we all got together in August and said every writer and everybody covering Notre Dame, they will be last in the country in turnovers created right now, we will all have said you are absolutely crazy because it seems like they practice this and they can create turnovers. I think the takeaway could be the turnovers are something that can start happening for Notre Dame's defense because that's what's been missing to date.
Well, with all due respect to Al Golden, is there a coach whose stock has gone up as much as Brian Mason's right now? I mean, the Irish special teams, could anybody have seen them being such an asset?
No, he's made punt block cool. It might be the only time punt block is cool nationally. We have 5 block punts, 4 or 5 influence punts. Guys want to buy in. I think the key is, you heard it in August. Now, Bo Bauer is an example of an all-time team player, but Bo Bauer said, if I don't start at linebacker, I want to start on all 4 special teams. That is leadership from captain on down saying, we can be something special on special teams. Their punt team with John Sod is great. Their punt block team is a national treasure. And their kick return team needs to get better. But I think the way kick return has been phased out of college football, I think if you're Notre Dame, you'll take a punt block maybe 8 out of 12 games this season, right? You'll take John Sott pitting the other team. They have been fantastic. And Tim Priester said when they hired Brian Mason, he's going to make a difference. Brian Mason said, we are going to block punts. And that's exactly what they're doing right now.
Yeah, I think Marcus Freeman, he expected it to be like this because Cincinnati tied for the nation's lead last year in block kicks. But I think it's 3 things. Number one, Brian Mason has such an aggressive approach to blocking kicks. And they do it without roughing kickers, which is a really unique combination. But that's number one. And then preparation. You know, they have a variety or they have things that they can do. You know, despite not having a lot of preparation time during the week, they don't give a lot of time to special teams to do that. And then the third thing is variety. The punt that Notre Dame blocked at Syracuse. Here comes Clarence Lewis off the edge, not accounted for. Nobody got a finger on him. So there's a lot going on there. Brian Mason is clearly one of the best in the country.
Friends, you can subscribe to Irish Illustrated. It is the #1 source for Notre Dame sports online. Head to irishillustrated.com, click on join, find the best plan for you. Still to come on the countdown, there has been a huge surge of Clemson fans in South Bend this weekend. We'll see how that has affected the scene in and around the stadium. Plus, how a Clemson captain has handled family tragedy this season. It all comes your way when the countdown rolls on.
Welcome back to Countdown to Kickoff. We're about 35 minutes away from sending things over to the NBC Sports crew for the start of the game. You're looking at a live look at the tailgating lots right now, and some wind certainly isn't stopping fans from showing out in full force.
When you host an opponent with a top 5 ranking like Clemson, you know fans will show up in big numbers, no matter the weather. At the tailgates today, things are a little less intense because Notre Dame issued a no tent advisory. Take that down. But it isn't stopping fans from getting pumped before the game.
I mean, it's been an up and down season. A win like this could be a big redemption. Really build some momentum going forward into the rest of the Marcus Freeman era. So looking forward to a good game.
And it's been a busy weekend so far for bars around South Bend, including the Linebacker Lounge, which teamed up with NBC Sports to host the Notre Dame Fan Base Face-Off. Now, as part of the event, NBC Sports will award 25 prizes, which consist of a portable grill, 2 flags, a picnic caddy, a tailgate chair, and 20 can coolers with an estimated retail value of close to $500. To enter, you'll want to head to the website on your screen. You must be present at the bar to claim your prize. The sweepstakes will remain open until midnight tonight. Now, before the Tigers take the field tonight, they'll be doing so with heavy hearts.
That is following the tragic death of one of their star players' sisters. With more about the motivation behind Clemson's season this year, let's go back to Notre Dame Stadium and the third member of our team, Matt Locke.
How's it going, guys? It really is a heartbreaking story. Clemson defensive lineman Brian Brisset losing his 15-year-old little sister Ella to brain cancer just a few weeks into the start of the season. The Ella beat the disease once, only to have it return. While she was undergoing a second round of treatment, Brian had to leave his family in Maryland to return to South Carolina for the football season. Ella was scheduled to walk next to her brother on September 10th when Clemson hosted Furman, but she suffered a seizure the night before and couldn't be there. She died 5 days later on September 15th. Clemson head coach Dabo Swinney and the team continue to support Brian and the Brisset family, who know Ella is watching over her older brother from above.
All can learn from Ella. You know, I mean, she's a sweet girl. I mean, she had written a letter, you know, and she just talked about how bad cancer was. Yes, it's bad, but she said, you know, I have a choice, and I choose to have a great attitude, and I'm going to make the best of each day.
Number 11, Brian Brisset, has been wearing Ella Strong on his arm tape all season long, so keep an eye out for that during tonight's game. Back to you.
Our thoughts certainly with that entire Brisset family during this very tough time. Ella's memory will live on, though, with the way she inspired others. Matt, thank you. There are so many storylines surrounding this game, and we've only reached halftime here on the Countdown. We'll hear from a number of the key players in tonight's game and hear what each team has to say about their opponent with some quick hits. We're back in just over 2 minutes. Don't go anywhere.
Live from Notre Dame Stadium, this is 16 News Now's Countdown to Kickoff.
As my man, the late Jeff Jeffers, would tell you, it is always a great night for football, and you are looking at a very windy Notre Dame Stadium as the Irish find themselves blown back into the national spotlight, playing host to the fourth-ranked and unbeaten Clemson Tigers. Let's kick off the second half of our show now with some quick hits. We'll start with the rise of Isaiah Foskey, who has worked his way into being a legitimate and potential first-round NFL draft pick. Foskey has been on a tear recently with a hat trick of sacks against UNLV, another sack at Syracuse. That gives him 7 on the season, one behind the FBS sack leader, Jose Ramirez. No, not the Cleveland Guardian, but the guy from Eastern Michigan. Foskey has 23 career sacks. That is just 1.5 behind Justin Tuck for the program record, which Tuck set back during his playing days with the Irish from 2002 to 2004. The scary part about all these numbers, Foskey says they should be even bigger.
It feels good, but I always look at film. I always see a lot of plays left on the table. They can get more sacks and more tackles, but I feel like it's something that I was just looking forward to, is to get the production that I want to. And then once I finally worked on just pass rush, that's when everything started clicking and then everything started going way to win.
And on the other side of the ball, how have the Irish been scoring touchdowns? Well, mainly with their running attack, but Marcus Freeman and company are looking for some of the team's wide receivers to step up and make some big plays. Deion Colsey's use has been limited so far this season by offensive coordinator Tommy Rees, as the Irish have been looking for another option for Drew Pine to rely on after tight end Michael Mayer. Now, last week, the sophomore wideout caught 3 passes for 44 yards, including a 21-yard grab from Drew Pine in the second quarter, a play before he threw an interception. Rees hoping the offense can count on Colsey again tonight as part of their game plan against Clemson.
Yeah, it's obviously got good size and length, and coming back off an injury, took a couple weeks there early in the season, but has really progressed well. And he had a good week of practice last week that earned him some opportunities out there, and he went out and made them. He's a kid last year who was playing for us a good amount as a true freshman, and somebody that we want to see continue to progress and can definitely help us win some games.
Another factor that seems to change weekly is who is going to emerge as Notre Dame's top running back for the game. The focus lately has shifted to the power backs in Audric Estime and Logan Diggs. Each of them had 20 carries last week against Syracuse, the first time that's happened in nearly 20 years. For the season, Estime has 99 carries and Diggs 95, but Chris Tyree has had his moments too, toting the ball 78 times. Dabo Swinney doesn't really care which one of them is getting the ball. He knows what the Tigers have to be prepared for.
A million ways to do it, but when it's all said and done, the ball snap, here comes the power right at you. And, you have to be able to fit it all up against, all their different looks, alignments, motions, et cetera. So they do a really nice job, got a good package.
Now, the last time Clemson took the field, it wasn't DJ Uiagalelei leading the team to a win, but the backup quarterback instead. Freshman Cade Klubnik entered the game in the third quarter against Syracuse 2 weeks ago in relief after the offense struggled to get going with Uiagalelei as the starter. Now, Klubnik finished the game by completing 2 of 4 passes for 19 yards and had 15 rushing yards as well, but he became the first Clemson backup quarterback to lead the program to a come-from-behind win since 2018. Don't let the move fool you. Dabo Swinney says there's no QB controversy in his locker room.
Sometimes, Steph Curry goes, 2 for 25. Your best player sometimes can have a bad day, and he just, got out of rhythm, made some bad plays, and, we just need to change. And so we showed we got that guy that can come in here. DJ's our quarterback. There ain't no question about that. That's our guy. That's our leader. You can write that right now. DJ's our guy.
Apparently, the College Football Playoff Committee has seen enough from Clemson this year to put the Tigers into the top 4 of the first rankings released this season, ahead of Michigan as the committee's 4th best team. Clemson has grinded out some close wins this year, beating 3 teams in the CFP committee's inaugural rankings. Syracuse is 20th, Wake Forest 21st, and NC State ranked 22nd. The Irish have beaten a common foe in Syracuse, but the other team Notre Dame played when they were ranked in the AP poll, BYU, they haven't won a game since playing in the Shamrock Series. They've lost 4 straight. I doubt the Cougars ever play in that game again. Marcus Freeman has nothing but kind words to say about the team Dabo Swinney has assembled.
You're going to go against the best, and who's the best? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of really good defensive. I mean, not a lot, but there's a few schools that have elite defensive lines. This is one of them. I mean, we played Cincinnati last year here in the stadium, and there was some red. I mean, it sticks out when you're, a bright color maybe, red or orange, and in Notre Dame Stadium. But it's a home field advantage. To play a team like Clemson at Notre Dame Stadium, it's a huge advantage for us.
Now, we mentioned it as part of our first Chrisman Custom Painting trivia answer, but Notre Dame's home game against Clemson in 2020 was one to remember. A 4-yard strike from Ian Book to Avery Davis capped off an 8-play, 91-yard drive to tie the game at 33 with just 22 seconds remaining. In the first overtime, both teams traded punches. DJ Uiagalelei and Kyron Williams each scoring a touchdown. But it was Williams scoring again in the second overtime before fans flooded the field after a 47-40 Irish win. Clemson knows they're going to get Notre Dame's best when the whistle blows.
Notre Dame is a great place to play at. Probably one of the richest history of college football. They have Touchdown Jesus there. They have a lot of rich history. They have a movie after Notre Dame with Rudy. And I think it's an amazing place. I think they're an amazing program, done an amazing job this year and years in the past. I think it's going to be really cool to be able to see there when the stadium's going to be packed.
We know everywhere we go, we're going to get everybody's best shot. We're going to get everybody's best fan support. You name it. It kind of comes with being at Clemson, and I think as a competitor, you love that.
We are closing in on 25 minutes until kickoff between the Irish and the Tigers, and we still have plenty to talk about. Notre Dame on NBC analyst Jason Garrett joins the show to break down tonight's matchup. And here's another Chrisman Custom Painting trivia test. Prior to that 2020 win over Clemson, when is the last time the Irish beat a top 5 team at the stadium? I'll have the answer. Hopefully you will too when the countdown returns in 2 minutes.
Hello, you got me?
Here is your Chrisman Custom Painting trivia answer.
Prior to the 2020 win over Clemson, Notre Dame's last home win over a top 5 squad occurred on September 5th, 1998. Tom Brady led Michigan to a 13-6 halftime lead against Bob Davies' Fighting Irish. But the Irish came back in a big way in the second half. Autry Denson ran wild, collecting 162 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. And while Jarius Jackson only completed 4 passes on the day, 2 of them were for touchdowns. A sellout crowd celebrated as Notre Dame stunned the 5th-ranked Wolverines 36-20, easily the biggest win of the Davie era. Here at the stadium, we are pleased to be joined by the analyst for tonight's game on NBC, Jason Garrett. And Jason, you've had to make the transition from the sideline to the booth. How has that been for you?
Well, it's been fun. You know, I've been working for NBC. I'm doing the Notre Dame home games, and I'm also doing the Football Night in America back in Connecticut. It's been a whole lot of fun. Everybody at NBC, they've been great. They're teaching me how to do it. We're doing Notre Dame games. You kidding me? It doesn't get better than this.
What you've been able to watch every Notre Dame game so far this season. What is your impression of the team?
Oh, I think they have a chance to be a really good team. Obviously, 2 disappointing losses. Marshall and Stanford, teams that they were better than. They didn't play their best game, and they let those games get away from them. But the loss to Ohio State in week 1, that's a great football team. They've won the rest of them. I think there's a formula for them to winning. Running the football in the games that they've won and had success, they've done a great job controlling the ball, running the ball, taking some pressure off their quarterback, taking some pressure off their defense. I think that's going to be key tonight against Clemson.
You've had the chance to observe Marcus Freeman. You've also been the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. How would you compare being the head coach of the Cowboys to being the head coach of the University of Notre Dame?
You know, I actually think there are a lot of similarities. They're high-profile programs. You know, people love football in Texas. They love the Dallas Cowboys. There's a lot of focus on that, and it's the same thing with Notre Dame. I mean, this is essentially where football began. So a lot of attention with Notre Dame and with the Cowboys, and there's some great things about that. To have those eyeballs on you and to be in that environment, it's special. When things are challenging, though, again, there's a lot of noise you have to deal with. I feel like he and his staff did an amazing job when they got off to a rough start, just fighting through it and keeping everybody focused on what they need to do. They've won 5 out of their last 6. They got a big challenge tonight.
Yeah, speaking of a big challenge, Notre Dame's opponent ranked 4th in the first college football playoff. In your mind, is that where they should be right now?
Well, Clemson's awfully good. I mean, a 14-game win streak, and it's one of the best programs in the country and has been for a number of years. So they're certainly right in the mix there. They're 8-0. There's a lot of 8-0 teams, though, and that's the challenging part about the college football playoff. You can only choose 4 of them, but there's a lot of football to be played. Tonight's game, there's some other games going on today that will factor into it. So, you know, I think they're where they're supposed to be, but these decisions will be made here in the next month or so.
That's Jason Garrett. He'll be with Jack Collinsworth on the call tonight. Notre Dame and Clemson coming up.
And thankfully, this is a night game. Earlier on, just before 5 p.m., we had some wind gusts in town, upwards of around 60 to 66 miles an hour. Thankfully, though, we are starting to lose some of that southwest wind. Still sustained, though, up into those 20s. The wind will still be an issue throughout the game, but at least we're not dealing with those 50-plus mile-an-hour wind gusts, and these gusts will continue to climb down as we go throughout the game. The other issue with the southwest wind is it's going to make it feel a little bit cooler out there as well. It's going to feel like the upper 30s, lower 40s for this evening's game here. Kickoff again is scheduled just right after 7:30, and we're going to see that temperature right around 50 degrees, and we're going to continue to see the skies kind of clearing on out. And as we go throughout the game, we are really going to start to kind of shake that wind across all of Michiana and right here at Notre Dame Stadium as well. But the first half of the game, again, the wind will certainly be an issue, with gusts at times getting up around 30 to 40 plus miles per hour out of the south and west. Countdown to kickoff continues after this 2-minute and 30-second break.
Back inside the countdown, we're just under 15 minutes away from kickoff right here on WNDU. Time to reveal how fans voted in this week's Lock Monday Auto Group Irish fan poll at WNDU.com. This week we asked Irish fans, how much would a win over Clemson change your perception of the season? 19% of the audience thinks a win would totally change their feelings about the Irish team this year. 43%, the majority, say a win changes their view quite a bit. 27% feel it wouldn't change much, and finally 11% have their mind make up, and this will not change. As always, thanks for participating in this week's Lock Monday Auto Group Irish fan poll. Watch Countdown to Kickoff before Notre Dame football home games all season long for more fan polls like this one. So let's go a little further in depth on this Clemson squad visiting the stadium tonight.
Yeah, that's where we pick up the discussion in our second Irish Illustrated report of the night.
Tim Priester, Clemson is a controversial number 4 selection this week for the College Football Playoff Committee. How good is this edition of the Tigers?
Certainly controversial in the state of Michigan. I get that because I do think that Michigan is the better football team. I think O'Malley's going to concur with me on that. But, this is a winning program. I mean, a big-time winning program. Dabo Swinney in his 15th year, 6 straight playoff appearances prior to last year's awful season, which was 10-3, which obviously is great by most standards. So, but is it a great football team? No, I don't think so. I think it's a pretty great defensive line, and everybody else around them certainly is competent. I think their offensive line is better than it's been, but they don't have Trevor Lawrence at quarterback, and so there's a fall off there. Love their running back. Will Shipley, I think, is a great running back. It's a very, very good team that even when they fall behind, which they have been behind in the second half of games this year, they find ways to win football games.
I think if we came into the season, we knew there were 3 teams in Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State. And I would add at this point, Tennessee, obviously, and Michigan to that list, with Clemson right outside them. And I don't see why Clemson couldn't beat Michigan if the defensive line were to hold up against Michigan's offensive line. That would be a matchup to watch, actually, D-line versus O-line. I'm sure Clemson could take out Ohio State, and I think Clemson could, not sure if they keep up with Tennessee. I think those 3 SEC teams are the best right now, but Clemson deserves to be in the conversation. When you say controversial, 4, 5, 6, I can argue 4, 5, 6. I would probably argue 6, but I'm not arguing 7, 8, 9 or anything like that. I think Clemson is a quality, top tier-ish football team, not necessarily top tier from what we've seen this season, and they haven't had as many chances to prove it because the ACC simply doesn't give them the opportunity that Notre Dame is supposed to provide here as a 7-1 team that comes in 5-3.
Tim O'Malley, what are some of the weaknesses in Clemson that Notre Dame can try to exploit?
Yeah, it's that's the problem. They're a very solid team. When we're going through the top 4, top 5, it's because look at all these explosives. Look what Michigan has at running back. Look at all these things. Now, Clemson is solid across the board. And Priester pointed it out earlier, DJ Uyunglele is a good quarterback. For 7 games, he was a very good quarterback. He comes in to this game, much like Drew Pine for different reasons, not quite as confident as he could have been because he was benched in the win over Syracuse. They needed to put him down to win that game. He's the starter. He's not Trevor Lawrence. If they can get to him in the first quarter and first half, I think that will help. It's not a weakness, but it can kind of turn the tide that's kind of going downhill a little bit maybe and put that doubt in his mind during the second half.
Yeah, I would hesitate to use the word weakness with this Clemson program. I would say limitations because they aren't as good as they normally are in some areas. I think Notre Dame can run the football a little bit against them. I don't see why they can't. It's a great matchup, O-line versus D-line. But a lot of this all depends upon what Drew Pine does and what the passing game does. So, I think you're going to have to limit the explosives against this team. They're probably going to be good in the red zone because Notre Dame's defense has not been great in the red zone. There's some limitations there that Notre Dame needs to find.
And you can subscribe to Irish Illustrated, the #1 source for Notre Dame sports online. Just head to irishillustrated.com and click on Join to find the best plan for you.
Only about 15 minutes until the actual kickoff, and even less before we wrap things up. We'll get you ready with our X Factors, keys to win and score predictions. It's the Dairy Queen keys to the game when the countdown returns in just 2 minutes.
It's time for our keys to the game, brought to you by Dairy Queen. Happy tastes good.
Friends, my favorite time of the show. We throw things in like it's a giant blizzard, most of it not good for you either. We'll start with tonight's X Factors. Let's check back in with Matt Locke from the stadium. Who's your X Factor for the Irish?
Well, I'm going to take Jarrett Patterson. The matchup we've been hearing about all week is the offensive line for Notre Dame against the defensive line of Clemson. So why not give it to the captain and the signal caller? You're going to need a score to beat Clemson, whether that means by Drew Pine having all day to throw or that running back room having a wide open gap to run. Oh, captain, my captain.
Matt, I love it. Guys, we talked about how well the run game has to perform in order to upset Clemson. And that starts the play of my X Factor, Audric Estime. Now, out of the three-headed monster backfield that Notre Dame has, he's the one you least want to see barreling towards you in the fourth quarter. If ND sticks to the run game for a full 4 quarters, he'll wear down the Tigers eventually, and that'll lead to some success for the Irish.
I don't believe you can do a quarterback as an X Factor, but those who do analytics for football teams do a stat called Havoc. It's tackles for loss, passes defended, forced fumbles, divided by total plays. Maris Leofau needs to create havoc tonight. He looks the part, right? That wild hair coming out of the back of the helmet. He's got great speed, especially in pass rush. He made a big play last week. He is capable of creating havoc, but he hasn't done it as much this season as many expected. Tonight is the night to do it. Maris Leofau needs to drive Clemson nuts tonight. Play smart, play fast, create havoc. All right, keys to win. Matt, what will it take for the Irish to come out on top tonight?
Well, I'm going to keep this simple. Do your job. Marcus Freeman has been telling us when this team does their job and executes, they can win any game they play. Prove it. Everyone who steps on this field tonight in the blue and gold, do your job. I'll save the swear words for Tommy Reese.
Thank you. We like to keep our FCC license.
Yeah, I like it, Matt. And it sounds simple, right? So my key to win, in theory, should be stick to the script. If the Irish are going to knock off Clemson, they'll need to do just that. Don't panic if Clemson gets ahead by a score or two. Don't force your quarterback into hurried mistakes. Executing a patient offense has been the name of the game in recent weeks. I think it should continue to be.
I know I'm going stat nerd tonight, but turnover margin is absolutely key for the Irish. 78% of the time, the team that wins turnover margin wins the game. Make things happen tonight on defense, which you haven't done much all year, and protect the ball on offense. So that brings us to score predictions. Clemson favored by 4 at last check. Matt Locke, what say you?
Guys, I want to believe, I want to think, I want to hope, but all my belief is tied into the Phillies making a comeback in the World Series. I've got Clemson 28-13.
Well, someone's got to pick the Irish tonight. I don't feel like it'll be you, but I'm going to take Irish here tonight, 28-21. I think they get a signature win from Marcus Freeman tonight.
I can see ways Notre Dame wins this game, but I see too many that they lose it. I think the defense does its job, but the offense doesn't. 24-20 Clemson. So we turn it over to Jack Collinsworth and Jason Garrett for NBC Sports coverage of the Irish and Tigers here on WNDU. We're back on 16 News now after the game with highlights and reaction. For Drew and Matt, thanks for watching. Countdown to kickoff.